सर्वधर्मान् परित्यज्य मामेकं शरणं व्रज.
The miseries of material existence and the most hopeless conditions of life is the best possible opportunity to turn to God.
Bare Knuckle Bhakti presents The Gift of Desperation, a Bhakti recovery podcast. This is a 12-step based Bhakti-oriented space. Here we share our experience, strength, and hope in the spirit of recovery from addictions and associated behaviors. Welcome. Hello. Welcome back to our 12-step mini-series. Here we will go through the 12 steps, and we are on step 2, which is came to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. If you haven't listened to step 1, I had split it up in 2 parts, part 1 of step 1 and part 2 of step 1. I invite you to go back and listen to those. But it's still relevant if you wouldn't like to do that. So, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Wow. Now that's a really big step after admitting that we're powerless over our addictions and associated behaviors and that our lives had become unmanageable. After that, there's like this gap. So we admit that. So what now? Now, those who have a higher power at this point, and I think a lot of people who are into yoga or bhakti yoga or coming from some sort of spiritual background have an idea of this. Others, such as myself, when I got into recovery, I had no idea. None. I had no idea about a power greater than myself. It was not in my family background. We were cultural Jews, not religious Jews. And there was really not much of God in my life. So I was free to draw whatever I'd like and whatever I liked as far as a higher power. So it was really important to come to believe that a power greater than myself can and will restore me to sanity if I so wish. And this was a huge leap of faith for me. Coming from that broken point of step 1 in complete defeat, I was literally beaten into submission. And I had really used up every resource that there was. I used up every single person, place, and thing to try to help me and myself to restore myself to sanity, for you to restore me to sanity, for this thing, this place. I tried geographics. I tried everything to restore me to sanity. A new friend, a new band, a new instrument, a new whatever it was. And nothing worked. Nothing worked. But when I was fully surrendered, I knew, and this was the most fortunate place for me to be. I was literally out of ideas. There was no more creative will left in any bit of my body, mind, or spirit that could even suggest or believe that something on this material plane could help me. I exhausted all of it. That was the best place for me to be because it left it open. And like I said, I didn't have an idea of a higher power, so I was able to kind of explore that freely. Actually, the very first book that I got was on spirituality. Of course, was the 12 and 12 and the Narcotics Anonymous basic text and the big book. And those were my 2 home programs, NA and AA. Mostly AA, even though I was a drug addict. I found a lot of my good, simple, straightforward recovery in AA and continued to get my recovery there. And NA was a huge part of it as well. I found that the NA literature spoke to my heart, and I really identified with that more than the AA literature in a different way. Sort of the NA literature were fellows and like siblings, kind of like that. And the AA was kind of like the grandpa, the grandpa of the program, teaching me this wisdom in a different way. And it was very helpful. It says right in the NA literature that right sort of towards the end of in the NA basic text, towards the end it says we open our minds to believe that we may have difficulty with this, but by keeping an open mind, sooner or later we find the help we need. And this was really my experience. I had this open mind because I knew that of myself, there would be no way that I could restore myself to sanity. Not a chance. Not a chance in hell. And no one around me could do it either. So it was for me, thank God, it was a relatively easy step at first. And having that faith is, for me, fear helped that, because I was really in a space where if I didn't turn to God, to a higher power, I would have started that cycle of insanity over again. I know it, because there isn't a strength on this planet that could do that for me. So I started with books like Dancing Woolly Masters by Gary Zukav. I started with, like I said before, of course, the literature of 12-step program, AA and NA, and started to read stuff like the Tao of Physics. And that kind of gave me a sort of a scientific plus Eastern way of looking at religion, spirituality, and, well, not religion, excuse me, scratch that. A way of looking at God, a path through very, very simple terms. And this really empowered me to trust, because it gave me the idea that there were powers greater than myself that were immense and incountable and not graspable for the human mind. And that and wonders, miracles happen all the time. And I saw that in awe, and was able to reach out to that desire, to that want of, please relieve me from the bondage of the self. Relieve me from the bondage of the self. And it really, really was this was my burning bush. This was my burning bush. A lot of people talk about the 4th and 5th steps of taking your moral inventory and sharing it with God, yourself, and another human being as being a burning bush experience in the program, this huge awakening. And I didn't have that as much as I did. Actually, I didn't have much of that at all. I was very happy to have done my 4th and 5th step, but the 2nd step was really the Wizard of Oz moment, when the beginning of the Wizard of Oz, everything was in black and white, and the tornado happened and all that, and all of a sudden Dorothy was in Oz and everything was multicolored, technicolor. And it was kind of like that for me. And that, what we call pink cloud in the program, lasted years. And that's what I needed. So the importance of this step for me was literally, for me, it was this step or I would break. And I really encourage everyone to be able to free your mind of any preconceived notions or anything that we have of God or not God, and simply trust the process. Some people find their higher power in the meetings themselves. That is something very, very healthy, as long as we don't personalize it and make people in that program our higher power. It is crucial. The first 3 steps will be the foundation of our program. They say the first step is the foundation, yes, but the first 3 steps will really be the foundation of our program. The faith that we can have by believing a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity is going to set the scene to the rest of our recovery. For me, that power is Krishna, and to tell you the truth, Jesus skips in and out of that picture, and so does Mother Mary and many other religious and spiritual manifestations. And when I put the second step into my bhakti lens, when I put that together and weave that together, I find that my toolbox has become not only bigger, it became more comprehensive. I was able to detail things more. I didn't need it at first, and not everybody needs that detail. I needed to really define my higher power at a certain point of my recovery in order to trust more and more. I think coming into the program being completely broken, I would have, and this parent figure, this program, as a parent, as a parental figure, as a guide, as a safe space, I just trusted. I didn't ask any questions. It was just like finally safety. I was running out of that burning building into a safe place. And I knew in the deepest depths of my heart that this was a safe space for me. When I started to grow in my recovery and work the steps and go to meetings and actually live my life trying to practice these principles in all of my affairs, I realized that I needed a more comprehensive and detailed version of what that higher power is. And I explored so many things: Christianity, Catholicism. Funny thing is, I never really explored Judaism. What's at my feet right now. Um, and I mean, I've read the Torah and I've read the First Testament, which is very similar, if not the same thing. And I think the more I am in my spiritual life moving forward, I see that all of these scriptures, literatures, are pretty much saying the same thing in different ways, speaking to different cultures, speaking to different, you know, pictures or non-pictures of God. And it's just up to me later in my program and later in my life, it was up to me to choose or not. And I felt the need to do so. The freedom is freedom that I felt after coming to believe. It's really coming to believe. That means we're stepping into faith and we're stepping into hope. I stepped into faith and I stepped into hope the moment I came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. And I never experienced faith or hope before. I lived a life of negative conditioning, survival, fighting. I don't mean fist fighting, but I mean fighting, just fighting everything, trying to keep the world at bay, trying to keep its craziness at bay, and becoming crazy myself. It just clueless, absolutely clueless as to what real freedom or happiness meant. And I came to know this when I had faith in a power greater than myself. I came to know what true freedom was. I came to know even acceptance in its small form. That was sort of the gateway to acceptance. Because when we come to believe, and even if we're just willing to come to believe, when that happens, it means we're saying, and in other words, we're saying, I am not the maker, doer, and seer of all things. I am now giving that right over because I have failed miserably. And I am giving that right over to a power greater than myself because I am insane and I do insane things. And only by divine intervention can that be turned over, cared for, and given back to us in a more sane way. You know, all my life, I think I lived in insanity. I lived in insanity because I wasn't aware that any power greater than myself was a good power. I thought any power greater than myself, I learned, were the heavy hands of my upbringing, the negative conditioning I got from schools and institutions, the heavy neglect that I experienced as a child. And I'm saying this without blame. I'm saying this just as fact. And that's what I learned. I learned that powers greater than myself are the government, or the schools, or the dysfunctional families. And I always knew that this world and its powers were not very kind. So it was very hard for me to give up control because I was too busy surviving. Yeah. So after coming to believe, my life was never the same. And I began to live a life free from the bondage of the false self. Now, that could be taken into any religious belief system. It is helpful for any direction that anyone wants to go. I chose the path of bhakti in a very untraditional way. And the door for my spirituality and for my experience of that is a very wide door. Anyway, I love you guys. I hope that this was helpful in understanding the second step. And I'm looking forward to doing the third step with you. Haribol, Hare Krishna. This concludes another episode. Thanks for listening. In order for me to serve this community to the best of my ability, I welcome feedback. Please write your feedback at bhaktirecoverypodcast@gmail.com. That's bhaktirecoverypodcast@gmail.com. Also, please don't forget to follow and give us a 5-star rating. Share this with family and friends. If you'd like to join our Bhakti Recovery community or just find out what we're all about, please visit our website at www.bhaktirecoverygroup.com. That's www.bhaktirecoverygroup.com. There are no dues or fees, and we meet daily. If you or someone you know is struggling with addictions and/or associated behaviors, you will find links in our show notes to various 12-step programs. Nobody seeking recovery need ever be alone again.
सर्वधर्मान् परित्यज्य मामेकं शरणं व्रज.
The miseries of material existence and the most hopeless conditions of life is the best possible opportunity to turn to God.